Number 10. Madagascar's mouse lemur. A new species of mouse lemur has been discovered in Madagascar as the tiniest primate in the entire world. That's right, it's not quite a tiny monkey, but to a lot of people, it's even cuter. You're gonna wish you had one of these as a pet. It's under a foot long, about 30 centimeters, and has giant, adorable eyes. It kind of looks like an alien, to be honest. But how did they find it? It all happened when scientists were on the hunt for lemurs in the forests of Madagascar. Out of nowhere, they spotted a pair of bright eyes glaring at them from out of the dark. The first thing they noticed was that the eyes were quite large, considering the animal was only about the size of a fist. Upon closer inspection, they realized that this was an entirely new mouse lemur that had never been seen before. This is outstanding, considering there are already 108 known species of lemur, and even more amazing since a third of them are currently critically endangered. Unfortunately for this newest lemur, it could already be on the edge of extinction. That is, according to Ut Radespiel from the University of Veterinary Medicine, Hanover. Ut has been studying lemurs for 25 years and knows what he's talking about. It actually took 29 scientists coming together from 6 different countries to properly identify this animal as a new species, seeing as identifying a new lemur from all the other species is a huge undertaking. Nobody is sure how many of these creatures are left in the wild or how much longer they'll be around for. Number 9. Frog with fangs. In the Philippines, a new species of frog has just been found, and it is absolutely bizarre. Scientists have discovered a fanged frog. That's right, it's a frog that has fangs like a vampire. And believe it or not, there are actually 75 recognized species of fanged frogs already living in the world. They can be found all the way from India to China, all throughout Thailand and Malaysia, and even down to Borneo and Sumatra. This particular fanged frog was found in the central Philippines, and it was hard to identify because of its similarities to other fanged frogs found on the island of Palawan. How did researchers identify it as a new species? They had to fully analyze the genome of the frog. What they discovered is that the species has been looking them right in the eyes for the past 100 years, since biologists had known they were there but hadn't known they were different from other frogs. I guess a lot of frogs look the same, even to frog researchers. To the untrained eye, of course, they look completely identical. But when scientists looked deep into their DNA, they found differences that make them unique. And in case you were wondering, fanged frogs don't feed on blood and they aren't dangerous. They just so happen to have fangs. Wonder what I would do if I had fangs. What do you think you'd do? Would you even want to? It might be cool for a little while, but it might also get in the way of eating some of your favorite foods. It's a tough call. Number 8. Translucent cave snail. A strange new snail has been found deep inside of a mysterious cave in Croatia. It's a translucent snail that belongs to a family of land snails with absolutely no visual orientation, meaning they basically can't see. But that's okay, lots of animals can't see because they live in the dark. These snails live exclusively in caves and are hidden from the world at a depth of nearly 3,000 feet beneath the surface, living inside of rock chambers where humans don't dare wander. This snail is very fragile. It has a translucent shell, and only a single living specimen has ever been found. As of right now, scientists don't know much about the snail. After all, they've only found one of them. They believe the snails probably live in the mud and have limited mobility. For all we know right now, this snail could be the only snail of its kind endemic to this particular cave system. That would be kind of sad, though, being the only snail of its species. It sounds lonely, doesn't it? The cave is called Lukina Yama Troyama, and it's the deepest of its kind anywhere in Croatia, with a maximum depth of just about 4,000 feet. The cave is so unique that it has 3 microclimatic layers. What that means is that it has 3 of its own ecological layers where the temperatures and climate is completely different. This gives almost unlimited possibilities for strange animals to develop, especially over thousands or millions of years. Number 7. Frilled Triceratops. It's always a good time when scientists uncover new dinosaurs. An entirely new genus and species of horned dino has just been identified in New Mexico, thanks to an incomplete skeleton. The new dinosaur species is kind of like a frilled triceratops. It belongs to a group of ceratopsid dinosaurs and lived during the Cretaceous period some 82 million years ago. That makes it potentially the oldest member of the group. Even more interesting is that it's the smallest member of its group as well, only growing to be about 15 feet or 4.5 meters in length. It may have been the original ancestor of a group of dinosaurs that branched out and evolved, becoming powerful monsters with horns and strange bone-like shields growing out of their heads. The partial skeleton includes pieces of skull, arms and hind limbs, and ribs. It was found inside of a rock formation in New Mexico and roamed North America at a time when the ecosystem was rich with some of the earliest dinosaur species, including the famous ankylosaur and some lesser-known Tyrannosaurus-like dinosaurs, which were hungry carnivores. Number 6. Mysterious Florida spider. In South Florida, a new species of spider has been identified, and it is terrifying. It began when a zookeeper in Miami was checking reptile traps around the facility. It was the zookeeper who first found the mysterious arachnid and took a picture of it. The zookeeper then showed the photo to the research department at the zoo. What the researchers found was that the spider did not look like anything in the current records. But despite the intrigue, there wasn't much they could do, and so the discovery sat on the back burner for 2 years, until another spider that looked exactly like the first one was discovered. After the second discovery, Dr. Rebecca Godwin from the Piedmont College in Georgia was sent to investigate. She confirmed the spider as a new species and called it the pine rockland trapdoor spider. This spider is a specialist that creates burrows underground and can live in them for decades. She says that these are some of the longest living spiders known to man. But what's really strange is that the spider has only ever been seen around the Miami Zoo, which really does seem like a strange place to call home. Do you think the spider was there first and then the zoo was built? Or do you think the zoo was there and the spider moved in? If it did, it might be one of the most intelligent spiders ever to know that a zoo was a good place for animals to live. Number 5. Hammer-headed bat. The hammer-headed bat is also known as the big-lipped bat. And yes, it is a very real animal. Even though it almost looks like some kind of flying demon and has been compared to the Jersey Devil, it is a real bat. It eats fruit, and it is in no way aggressive, but it may actually carry the Ebola virus. Scientists are still investigating because if it does, it needs to be kept far away from humans. The hammer-headed bat is what's known as a megabat and is the largest species native to Africa. They have a wingspan of nearly 4 feet, and as someone who doesn't know what they're looking at, they appear to be nightmare creatures summoned by Dracula himself. But they are actually quite sweet and docile. They only live in a small section of Central Africa, in swamps and in mangrove forests. What's really interesting is that scientists didn't even know about this bat for a very long time. It's only really been studied extensively in recent years. The good news is that unlike other megabats, the IUCN has rated the hammer-headed bat as least concern, meaning it's nowhere near becoming extinct. Number 4. Talking dinosaur. Mexican paleontologists have found something that is simply unbelievable. They have discovered what is believed to be a new species of talking dinosaur that lived 72 million years ago. The discovery was recently announced by Mexico's Natural Institute of Anthropology and History. The specimen has been given the name Tilapis galorum, and it once lived in what is today the northern state of Coahuila. Researchers discovered its tail, then they found its skull, and then they discovered the bony, hollow crest that it once used to communicate. The dinosaur was about 36 feet long, or 11 meters, and was one of the most talkative to have ever lived. You're probably wondering just how exactly a dinosaur could have talked. According to paleontologists, it produced low-frequency sounds very similar to what elephants produce. These sounds could have traveled many miles, allowing the dinosaurs to communicate with each other over vast distances. They would have also been able to emit sounds to scare off predators. However, even if humans had been around back then, we probably would not have been able to hear the sounds they made. Just like the sound made by elephants, they were probably at a frequency imperceptible to the human ear. Number 3. New dragons. In Brazil, 2 new dragon species have been discovered. Of course, these dragons don't fly or breathe fire. Instead, they are lizards that look like dragons and live in a dry, dense savanna region of Brazil called the Cerrado. The Cerrado is an ecosystem that is being destroyed as we speak by soybean plantations and charcoal production. It has been estimated that by 2030, only 3% of the region will remain, meaning these newly discovered dragon lizards will be long gone. The area was recently inventoried by biodiversity analysts working with Conservation International. They recorded 253 reptiles in the Brazilian Cerrado, 103 of which are endemic to the area. That means that if the area truly is reduced to nothing by 2030, there is a high likelihood that all 103 reptile species will be eradicated, including the 2 new little guys just discovered. These new lizards look a lot like bearded dragons, though not a lot is known about them because scientists haven't really had a chance to take specimen back to their lab. How many other species do you think have already gone extinct due to human activity in the Amazon that we never even got the chance to discover? Tell me in the comments below, then remember to subscribe to Titanic for more intense videos. Number 2. Giant night scorpion. As if scorpions couldn't get any more terrifying, a new species of giant night scorpion has just been found in India, in the region of the Western Ghat. Scientists working with the Institute of Natural History Education and Research described not only one new species of scorpion, but 7. They found bark scorpions in the forest and rock-dwelling scorpions outside of the forest, the latter of which are the most vulnerable to becoming extinct. Each new species is slightly different, though scientists haven't yet published the specific traits of each one. What we know is that the rock-dwelling scorpions are huge and nocturnal. They're also not venomous. What they are is in danger of extinction, which is horrifying considering scorpions have been living on our planet for the last 400 million years and have barely changed the entire time, other than shrinking down a bit. They've lived in the sea, they've grown to be giants that fed on dinosaurs, and now they are small and live throughout the desert and forests of the world, with even the newest species being in danger of vanishing. Number 1. Giant water centipede. Even more disturbing than scientists finding new giant night scorpions is scientists discovering a new giant centipede that happens to be amphibious. What this means is that we're no longer safe on land or in the water from creepy centipedes with almost 24 legs. This new species is a giant. It was discovered living on a couple of islands in Japan and is the first new centipede to be confirmed in nearly 150 years in the land of the rising sun. Worldwide, it's the 3rd swimming centipede ever discovered. Get ready to be grossed out because this thing is nasty. It can grow to be 8 inches long, about 20 centimeters, which is longer than most people's hands. It has 20 pairs of legs and is crawling all over the Ryukyu Islands, which are the very south of the country, hardly ever visited by human beings. This is why they weren't found until recently. Scientists actually collected 7 specimens, suggesting that they aren't that difficult to find. It's just that nobody looked for them. According to Live Science, researchers found the centipedes hiding under stones at the bottom of stream beds. Underwater, they prey on river shrimp. And when researchers tried to catch them on land, they would dive into the water and swim away like disgusting little snakes. The centipedes seem to have adapted extremely well to island life, learning how to swim through the water and run across the land. Number 10. Secret swastika buildings. Google Earth is a computer program that renders a 3D representation of Earth based primarily on satellite imagery. And of all the strange symbols that can be spotted on Google Earth, people have been citing swastikas. But these aren't swastikas carved into the ground or burned into fields. Instead, these are mysterious buildings shaped like swastikas, and you can only see clearly from the satellite images. Of course, we all know the swastika became a symbol of hate and evil after the German party used the symbol as such. But what a lot of people don't know is that the swastika actually came from Hinduism. The symbol was supposed to represent prosperity and good luck. But alas, just like the Nazis ruined so many things, they ruined this as well. Now, what about these buildings? They have actually been found all over the world, from a naval base in San Diego to a retirement home in Alabama, and even a hospital in Amsterdam that was spotted to be made in the shape of a swastika. You might be thinking, well, maybe they built these structures before the Nazis, but that wouldn't be true. The naval base in San Diego was built in the 1960s. Either all these buildings were shaped like swastikas by accident, or there's some kind of secret Nazi agenda going on that we can't even conceive. What do you think? Hail Hydra. Number 9. Giraffe in the garden. A Google Maps user discovered an extremely strange creature one day while using the application. The creature in question was spotted in a Welsh garden behind someone's house. Now, this isn't a Bigfoot or some kind of mutant creature. Instead, we're pretty sure that's a giraffe. In the image, you can clearly see it's a big property. It looks like a farm with a house, several outbuildings, farmland for growing, a yard with a pond, and what appears to be a large, long-necked giraffe. The beast of the shadow is very clearly visible on the ground, and if you zoom in far enough, you can see what's obviously the animal that should only be in Africa or in a zoo. I mean, as awesome as it sounds, no one really has any business having a pet giraffe, right? The big question here is, well, what in the world is a giraffe doing wandering around in a yard? There does not appear to be a fence, and there don't seem to be any other animals. It's literally just a single giraffe that these guys must own like a pet dog. Number 8. Mysterious cave. A mysterious and unexplainable cave has been discovered on a remote island in Antarctica thanks to Google Maps. Some are claiming this strange cave could be an entrance down into hollow Earth, like in the King Kong movies. Or it could be some kind of military cover-up. What's even stranger is that the cave appeared abruptly back in 2007 and then vanished just 6 months later. It's almost as if somebody spotted the cave, realized that it was a huge mistake, and forced Google Maps to cover it up and erase it. When the cave was visible, it measured an estimated 74 feet or 23 meters high and 249 feet or 76 meters in width. The cave was so big that it could easily fit hundreds, if not thousands, of people through its mouth at the same time. Now, the big mystery is, where did the cave come from, and how could it have vanished so quickly? Sure, it could have been some kind of natural event. The cave could have broken open because of melting ice, and then 6 months later it was filled with snow. Or the government could be up to something very suspicious in Antarctica that we have no idea about. What do you think about this mysterious cave? Do you think the military is trying to cover something up? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're at it, if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 7. Aliens in Antarctica? On Google Earth, UFO hunters have discovered a sign of what could be a potential alien invasion. The sign came in the form of an alien face discovered carved into the ice in an extremely remote part of the southeast of Antarctica. While many say the face is simply a coincidence created by shifting snow, there's no debating that the image taken from Google Earth really does look like some kind of strange humanoid creature. It has a pointed forehead, thin eyes, a small nose, and even a tiny mouth. It seems to be waking up from the snow, as if heralding an alien invasion. But what is it really? Could the face truly be a warning of alien doomsday? On the other hand, could it possibly be evidence of an ancient civilization that once lived on Antarctica? The truth is that all the mainstream scientists have been quiet on the matter. We don't know what the face is or how it got there. It's not like anyone is heading down to Antarctica anytime soon to take a look for themselves. Number 6. Creepy crash. A user on Google Maps made a rather shocking discovery at the scene of a motorcycle accident. Not only did the user spot a car smashing straight into the motorbike, but they also found something eerie and unbelievable lurking in the background. The accident took place at a bend in the road in Japan. It's not exactly clear what happened in the crash. Nobody really knows whose fault the accident was. However, looking beyond the crashed motorcycle with a keen eye, you can clearly see a skeleton trapped inside of a fence. Because the road is going around a sharp curve, and the left side of the curve is just a sharp wall, there is fencing to keep rocks from falling off the cliff and potentially hitting cars and pedestrians. Beneath that fence is very clearly a skeleton. It definitely doesn't look human. The skeleton could belong to a deer, but regardless of what kind of animal the skeleton once belonged to, the big question is, How did it get stuck underneath the fence? The workers must have realized that they had trapped an animal under the fence, and then they just continued installing it anyway without a care in the world? Would this happen anywhere else in the world? Number 5. Caught kidnapping. A kidnapping was recently discovered using the Street View of Google Maps. Users were shocked to discover what appeared to be two men kidnapping a person in broad daylight and walking out onto a busy street with their body bundled inside of a carpet. The two men can be seen dressing in black masks and black pants and white striped shirts like the Ronald McDonald Hamburglar. They exit an apartment complex with a rolled up carpet under their arms. Sticking out from the carpet, you can clearly see somebody's feet. It's also quite shocking that this incident happened in Sweden, where you wouldn't really expect a brazen daylight kidnapping. However, Google Maps users were quick to spot what's really happening here. According to Express News, by changing the street view to look at the other side of the road, it's obvious that there is a film crew. The whole thing was actually part of a film being made. The street view vehicle just so happened to drive by at the perfect time to catch what looked like a kidnapping. This actually makes so much more sense because even in the images you can see other people on the street. No woman walking her dog is just going to pass by without saying or doing anything. Number 4. Nessie spotting. Yet again, the Loch Ness Monster has been spotted. This time, Nessie was discovered by a woman in the United States over 3,500 miles or 5,600 kilometers away from the famous loch. Her name is Lisa Stout from Ohio, and on September 5th, 2018, she was searching through pictures of the loch on Google Earth when she came across the monster itself. Somehow the photo had gone completely unnoticed by everyone else on the internet, and yet it's pretty clear by looking at the image that there's some kind of serpent-like monster with its head bobbing out of the waves with a background of forest behind it. It looks an awful lot like the iconic black and white photo of the Loch Ness Monster. Wanting to let someone know, Lisa reached out to the official Loch Ness Monster Sightings Register and told them what had happened. They were appreciative of the sighting, though it hasn't actually brought anyone any closer to capturing the elusive monster. According to Google, people search for the Loch Ness Monster about 200,000 times a month. That's a lot of people monster hunting. This wasn't the first time someone found Nessie on Google Earth. In 2004, Bjorn Sig won the best Loch Ness Monster sighting when he spotted the creature 800 miles, or 1,287 kilometers away in Sweden. Number 3. Sinister bodies. Some very strange bodies have been spotted using the Google Maps Street View in Alaska. The image was taken in Anchorage. It was of two people who were quite smartly dressed. They seem to be wearing business suits and are walking through what appears to be a fairly busy park. People are everywhere, but nobody seems to be looking at these two individuals. It could be because they're missing the tops of their bodies. Whether it was a glitch with the camera or the software or some kind of secret technology that wasn't supposed to be discovered by an ordinary person, there's no doubt that what was seen on Google Maps was two pairs of legs walking side by side, dressed in the same pants and wearing the exact same shoes. It almost looks like their bodies have been half erased, but the weirdest part is that you can actually see through to the other side. It doesn't seem to be a glitch. It really does look like there's nothing above the legs. When a photo is being taken, the 360-degree cameras shoot multiple pictures to create the seamless image. This is done by knitting all the images together to make it seem a lot more realistic. However, sometimes shifting objects can ruin the scene as they move when the photos are taken. One explanation could be that these people are government operatives who were wearing invisibility gear that malfunctioned. That would be a fun assumption to make. But of course, a more realistic explanation is that the camera actually malfunctioned. Number 2. Mysterious stone gates. Hundreds of mysterious stone gates were recently discovered deep in a dry desert in Saudi Arabia, all thanks to Google Earth. This actually turned into a huge archaeological discovery after professionals used the app to find 400 previously undocumented stone gates that were most likely built by nomadic tribes thousands of years before today. According to archaeologist David Kennedy from the University of Western Australia, Arabia isn't just a hot, boring desert with nothing in it. It's full of archaeological treasures, just like these mysterious stones. David has actually been flying planes over Saudi Arabia since 1997, trying to document the bizarre structures found all throughout this seemingly barren wasteland. Some of them date back 2,000 years, while others date back as far as 9,000 years. But who built these stone structures? What were they for? They were likely constructed by the ancestors of the modern Bedouin people who still live in the region. They were also probably used by nomadic tribes to hunt. These gates were formed in such a way that stampedes of gazelles would become funneled through, running through the gates until they reached a choking point where they would then be slaughtered. Number 1. Plane in the forest. Sleuths on Google Earth have uncovered a mysterious plane hidden in a lush forest. It's parked in the rural countryside outside of Portland, Oregon. It's a full-sized Boeing 727 innocently placed in the middle of a patch of forest. From what we understand, the airplane belongs to a man who purchased it and then parked it in his garden. His garden, of course, being a miniature forest because he wanted to live in it. Of course, this is happening in Portland. This guy's name is Bruce Campbell, and he purchased the plane for over $100,000. He now uses the wings for his balcony and the cockpit for a reading room. Most of the original instruments are still inside to give the plane an authentic atmosphere, and he even got one of the bathrooms to function, though nobody's quite sure where exactly his waste is going. Maybe it's just in a big pile under the plane. Ugh, gross. But be warned, as Bruce doesn't really enjoy people creeping onto his property to poke their curious noses at his house. He recently told CNN that some of his visitors get really excited by what he's done. If you just can't help yourself and feel compelled to find the plane yourself, just don't bother Bruce while he's asleep, please. The last thing anyone wants is a stranger sneaking up on their airplane house while they're trying to take a rest. Number 10. Cursed Pompeii. A Canadian woman got into some trouble after stealing what turned out to be cursed artifacts from the famous Italian archaeological site of Pompeii. This woman was so terrified of the evil powers being exuded by the artifacts that she actually sent the stolen goods back to Italy, begging them to forgive her. But here's the deal. It took this woman, known only as Nicole, 15 years to send back the artifacts, claiming they were possessed and that they had evil intentions. What exactly were the artifacts? Well, Nicole stole 2 tiles from an ancient mosaic while visiting the archaeological park in 2005, as reported by The Guardian. She has since blamed the tiles for a string of misfortune that basically ruined her life. She was financially ruined, got breast cancer 2 times, and things have been generally pretty miserable. She has blamed all the bad things that happened to her on the negative energy spewing out of the mosaic tiles. So she sent them back to the Italian archaeological authorities. As for just how cursed these tiles really were, nobody knows. Scientists can't explain curses or luck, and to tell you the truth, neither can anybody else. Number 9. The Begging Bowl. The begging bowl is one of the strangest cursed objects in the world. The bowl was allegedly carved out of a monkey skull before being coated in a gold-like material. It was used by monks in Tibet to appease angry spirits. These monks actually used all kinds of bizarre skulls as offering plates, including the skulls of humans. What did they offer, you ask? They would place wine or bread in the begging bowl, or sometimes even blood. This was often done to drive vengeful demons away from a place of great holiness. Does that not weird you out, at least a little bit? Skulls being used as offering plates spooks me, for sure. The specific begging bowl that is believed to be cursed is currently located at the Traveling Museum of the world-famous paranormal and occult. But it was taken from a man in the Chicago area who claimed his grandfather used to feed the monkey skull blood to boost the good fortune of the family. This person's grandfather claimed that if the family were to ever forget to feed the skull blood, it would grow angry and an invisible entity would then wreak havoc on their lives. I don't know about you, but I'd tell Grandpa to quit scaring everyone and let the family go back to having a normal life. But that's just me. Number 8. The Ring of Sinanis. The Ring of Sinanis is one of the most mysterious pieces of jewelry in the world. According to legend, whoever steals the ring will be cursed by the gods, whether they like it or not. But where does the ring come from? It originally belonged to a Roman named Silvius, who was stationed in Gloucestershire over 1,500 years ago. Silvius visited the bathhouse dedicated to the Celtic god Nodens, god of healing, the sea, and hunting. While at the baths, his precious ring was stolen from him. He had a pretty good idea of who stole it, so Silvius created a lead tablet upon which he inscribed a curse, asking that no good come to a man named Sinanis until the ring was returned to the Temple of Nodens. We don't know if the ring was ever returned to the temple. The tablet with the curse was discovered by an archaeological team in the 19th century when they excavated the ancient temple dedicated to the god Nodens, while the ring itself was discovered in a field back in 1785. It took a while for the ring and the inscription to be linked. They are now together at their very own exhibition. It's unclear if the curse ever worked, but some claim that the ring was actually the inspiration for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, seeing as the famous writer J.R.R. Tolkien had actually been a professor at Oxford University investigating the curse back in the 1920s. Number 7. The Karun Treasure. The Karun treasure is a hoard of artifacts discovered in western Turkey that date back to the 7th century BCE. The artifacts themselves were part of a legal dispute between Turkey and New York Metropolitan Museum of Art back in the 1980s, prompting the museum to send the artifacts back to Turkey in 1993 after admitting that they knew the artifacts were stolen when they bought them. But the curse of the treasure goes back to 1965, when it was originally discovered in a small village by a group of amateur treasure hunters who illegally dug into the grave of a mysterious ancient princess. The villagers robbed the princess's tomb and managed to eventually get them sold to the Museum of New York. However, the villagers believe that all the pieces of the treasure are cursed to bring misfortune and death. This is because of the rumor that says all 7 men involved in the illegal dig site back in 1965 ended up dying violently or suffering from unspeakable misfortune. One of the thieves lost 3 of his sons in violent altercations before being paralyzed and dying alone. Another suffered from a divorce and the death of a son, and the person who actually sold the artifacts overseas fell on hard times, lived a life of misery, and died in great agony. Number 6. King Tut's cursed trumpet. Inside the tomb of King Tut, arguably the most famous Egyptian pharaoh of all time, was discovered a silver instrument that may have had the power to destroy worlds. The instrument is a trumpet. Did you know they had trumpets back in the time of ancient Egypt? Sure, they weren't exactly like trumpets of today, but they were still pretty good, all things considered. It was discovered in 1922 when British archaeologist Howard Carter stumbled upon the tomb of King Tutankhamun in the Valley of the Kings. There were actually 2 trumpets discovered inside the tomb. One was made of silver and the other was made primarily of bronze or copper. Neither had been exposed to natural light in over 3,000 years. According to the legends, blowing either horn causes war to break out. Just months before World War II, both trumpets were blown for the first time in millennia on a live radio broadcast from the Egyptian Museum. The next time the silver trumpet was blown, it was 1967, and days later, war erupted between several Arab countries and Israel. Then in 1990, the trumpet was played again, and just days later, the Gulf War broke out. And to make things even crazier, the last time the trumpet was sounded was in 2011, and the Egyptian Revolution happened immediately after. There really is no explanation for why this continuously happens. Some say it's coincidence, and some say it's a curse. All I know is that it's better to stay safe than sorry, and someone should put both trumpets back into that tomb. Would you blow the trumpets if you got your hands on them? Tell me why or why not down in the comments below. Then remember to subscribe to Titanic if you haven't already for more incredible videos. Number 5. Cursed Medieval Well. In England, an ancient well believed to hold secret healing powers was recently excavated. During the medieval era, the well was a popular pilgrimage site for devotees of Saint Anne, a popular cult of the time. The well was large enough for people to bathe in, which they would get all the benefits of the magical healing properties. Blessed wells were actually pretty common in Europe until about 200 years ago. People always found an excuse to turn something into a magical healing reservoir. But this particular well also came with a curse. There's a legend that says in the 16th century, a local landowner stole the property that the well was on. And so in retaliation, the monastery that had been caring for the well placed a curse on the landowner. The landowner very quickly ran into financial trouble, he lost his son to a mysterious disease, and he was found one night at the well with his skull crushed into pieces. It's doubtful that the well is still cursed, though some believe it still holds some magical powers. There honestly isn't much left of it now except for a couple of broken rocks, and archaeologists haven't reported feeling any magical energy. But they could just not be in tune to the magical energy in this mysterious place. Number 4. Fairy Rings of Doom. Fairy rings are often attributed to supernatural beings. Fairy rings are natural circles that appear in the forest, in the grasslands, or even in the desert. They can be circles of mushrooms or dirt or really anything. Depending on who you ask, these strange fairy rings can actually doom you to a cursed fate. One of the only fairy rings in North America is actually located in North Carolina. It's called the Devil's Tramping Ground. It's a barren circle of forest that some say was created by the devil himself by stomping on the ground until the earth became bleak and black and nothing grew. Anecdotal reports say that animals refuse to enter the circle. We know for sure that plants don't grow inside of it, and apparently some objects left inside the circle through the night will be gone in the morning. There are other fairy circles and fairy rings around the world, from the spooky region of Transylvania all the way to the deserts of Africa. And so far, scientists can't prove or disprove that these strange geological formations are cursed. Number 3. Mysterious Remains. At the Crescent Hotel in Arkansas, workers recently discovered something absolutely terrifying. Keep in mind that this is considered to be one of the most haunted hotels in all of America, according to CNN. Well, other than just experiencing poltergeist-like activity, spooky apparitions, and all kinds of other ghostly nonsense, workers at the hotel have now discovered a collection of bottles and jars that may contain cursed human remains. It's not clear where they came from, but they're totally disturbing and terrifying. The discovery was made during excavations while the hotel was being renovated. The bottles were found stuck in the dirt. Some bottles contain strange concoctions that may have once been used for medicinal purposes. Others clearly contained biological samples of cursed human body parts. It's not clear what the haunted hotel plans to do with these mysterious bottles, but hopefully they don't put them on display to draw in tourists, otherwise who knows what could happen. Number 2. Ada Doll. The Ada Doll is considered to be one of the most haunted dolls in the entire world. The doll is currently housed at the Museum of Shadows in Plattsmouth, Nebraska, considered to be one of the oldest and spookiest towns in the entire state. The doll is inside a collection of nearly 2,000 artifacts, but she's undoubtedly the most terrifying of them all. According to the tales, she was made in 1889 and sold to a young couple. But the couple didn't want her, so they threw her in the trash. But throwing this mysterious artifact away didn't work. She only came back to haunt her owners, though her eyes were missing upon her return. The Ada doll had different owners over several years, with almost all of them experiencing a subtle feeling of being sick and a sense that their energy was drained after interacting with the doll. Today, the owners of the Museum of Shadow only ever touch Ada if they're wearing special safety gloves. The rest of the time, she remains inside of a glass box where she can't suck the energy out of museum visitors. Number 1. The Cursed Mummy. Did you know about the secret cause behind the tragedy of the Titanic? There's a legend that says the Titanic was actually sunk because of a cursed mummy on board the ship. The mummy lived about 1,500 years before Jesus Christ. She was the princess of Amun-Ra and was buried deep inside of a vault in the city of Luxor after her death. Then, in the 1890s, she was dug up by 4 English archaeologists. The stories say that each archaeologist either died or vanished after taking the mummy out of her tomb. But even without them, the mummy in her sarcophagus made it to England, where it was eventually sold to a private buyer and loaded onto the Titanic to be shipped to New York. According to the legend, the cursed mummy then caused the ship to sink. But according to Snopes, there are some holes in this story. They claim that there was actually no mummy on the RMS Titanic. Snopes says that all the Titanic carried in 1912 were boring old products like auto parts and rabbit hair. No mummies. Snopes also claims that the story refers to not a princess, but actually the priestess of Amun, who is still mummified inside the British Museum today. And believe it or not, she has her own story of curses, with her ancient bones said to bring misfortune upon those who get too close.
Number 10. Arizona bark scorpion. The Arizona bark scorpion is one of the most dangerous bugs in North America, and it might be hiding in your own backyard. That's right. Depending on where you live, it might be hiding out under a rock or in a dark basement, ready to strike if you come too close. This species of scorpion is native to the Sonoran Desert, though, so it's going to be most prevalent in the Southwest. It's a small scorpion, light brown, and tremendously frightening. The bark scorpion mostly comes out at night to hunt for roaches and spiders. This is the time that you're most likely to encounter one of these deadly creatures. Because they have such poor eyesight, bark scorpions usually travel along the baseboards of people's homes searching for a meal, and during the day, they go into hiding spots to rest. These hiding spots can include cracks in the walls, dark places underneath your steps, and even in your shoes. But here's the deal. Bark scorpions typically want to avoid humans. Most stings are accidental. If you happen upon one while it's resting, you'd better keep your distance, or chances are that it's going to sting you. If the scorpion accidentally finds you during the evening and you startle it, it will probably also sting. And if you get stung by a bark scorpion, there is a chance you could die. It is rare, with only 2 recorded fatalities in Arizona because of bark scorpions since the 1960s. However, it is possible. Infants and the elderly are the ones most in danger from the scorpion's venom. But even if you don't die from getting stung by the Arizona bark scorpion, it still leaves a painful mark that can have you screaming and rolling on the floor in agony. Number 9. Ticks. Ticks are some of the most dangerous bugs in the world, even though they aren't poisonous at all. They are also some of the most overlooked pests in North America. These awful little insects feed on just about anything living that has blood in it, including mice, people, and even birds. The tick is able to transmit at least 15 diseases. That's what the CDC says, and they are on point here. The most common disease transmitted through a tick is Lyme disease. But there's also fatal infections that can damage your neurological system, like the Powassan virus. A tick bite can even cause you to become allergic to red meat. Although if you're already a vegetarian or vegan, that one probably isn't so bad. Would you even be bothered with an allergy to red meat? Tell us in the comments below. If you're not sure what a tick is, they're pretty disturbing looking little pests. Ticks are kind of like bed bugs. There are about 900 species of them, with the deer tick being the most prevalent and one of the most dangerous. There's also the American dog tick that's known for spreading Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Ticks are small, they have flat bodies, and they've got 8 little legs. They can live for up to 3 years, but need blood from an animal host to progress through their life cycle. They literally suck blood to keep growing. And even more terrifying is that after a female has a healthy meal of blood, she can lay up to 18,000 eggs. But how exactly does one of these little bugs give you a disease? It burrows into your skin. It literally cuts your skin open and then stuffs its body inside of you, secreting a type of natural glue so that it stays in place. Then, if it happens to be carrying certain bacteria or viruses, you can catch them from the tiny creature. The only way to get rid of one of these things is to physically rip it out of your flesh. Ugh, gross. Number 8. Yellow sac spiders. The yellow sac spider is one of the creepiest arachnids anywhere in the world. It has a gross yellow body, tinged kind of green. It also has dark legs and is only about 1/4 of an inch, making one of these pretty difficult to spot. But like all spiders, they are known to wander through open doors or windows, at which point they will infest a person's home. They also like to get away from the cold during the winter, sneaking into people's houses and setting up shop. But just how dangerous is this ugly bug? Well, you definitely don't want to get bitten by one. A bite from a yellow sac spider is extremely painful. Not only that, but their bite can be necrotic. What this means is that the venom delivered through the spider's fangs can damage and kill your skin tissue. It essentially makes your skin start to rot. It's highly unlikely that you would die from a yellow sac spider, but the last thing anyone wants is necrotic skin because of a spider bite. These bites usually heal extremely slowly while being itchy for a few days or even weeks. To make things worse, yellow sac spiders are known for getting trapped in bed sheets and clothing. If you happen to crawl into a bed at night and there's a sac spider under your sheets, chances are pretty good that you're going to get bitten. Oh yeah, and they live in almost all of the continental United States. Stay vigilant, people. Number 7, giant wasps. Giant wasps are truly bugs that must be feared. There is no better example of how dangerous giant wasps can be than when mortified tourists witnessed them literally murder someone in Thailand. It all happened when a local Thai tour guide took a French couple sightseeing into the wilderness of Chiang Mai on a Saturday afternoon. But the group accidentally disturbed a giant wasp hive during their jungle hike. Thousands of angry hornets roared out of the nest and swarmed the guide, and the tourists watched helplessly as they stung him all across his body. The man screamed and panicked and collapsed on the ground, and the French tourists fled in fear as the hornets began chasing them as well. They managed to get away and were rescued and taken to a hospital, but their guide was not so lucky. By the time the police arrived at the scene and found him, his body was swollen like a balloon, according to the local police lieutenant. Authorities said he probably suffered from an anaphylactic shock and died almost instantly. Even more disturbing is that when the police found his body, he was being feasted on by the giant wasps. The police even had to fumigate the area to get rid of the wasps before they could retrieve the guy's body. That's how terrifying these insects really are. And in case you were wondering, these are indeed the infamous Asian killer hornets, which possess neurotoxin capable of killing humans. Does that story make you reluctant to go visit Thailand? Tell me if you're scared now. Why or why not? Let me know in the comments below. Then remember to subscribe to Titanic if you haven't already for more intense videos. Number 6, toe-biting water bugs. The giant water bug is one of the weirdest insects on the planet. The water bug is huge. It has piercing mouth parts that it uses to bite, and the biggest water bug that's ever been recorded is over 4.5 inches or 12 centimeters. That's shockingly large for a simple bug. They live throughout marshes in North America. They can be found in pools and streams all across the world, and they spend much of their time hanging out near the surface of the water. They also have an exceptional means of reproduction in which the male giant water bug will carry the eggs of its offspring on its back until they hatch, something not done by many other insects. But why is the water bug so dangerous? It's not toxic and it can't kill. What it can do is bite your toes. That's why water bugs are often nicknamed toe biters. If you've ever had your feet dangling in a body of water and all of a sudden something bites your toe, it was probably a water bug. They can give an extremely painful bite that won't soon be forgotten, though there's never actually been a recorded death because of a water bug. They're simply not that dangerous, only annoying. Number 5, guinea worm. The guinea worm is a disgusting menace and the largest of any tissue parasite that's dangerous to humans. It's actually a parasitic bug that causes a disease by the same name. A single adult female worm is able to carry at least 3 million embryos and grow to be as long as 30 inches. When you get infected by this worm, it moves throughout your bodily tissues, even in your joints, where it causes severe pain. In most cases, the worm will ultimately burst out of your foot, causing tremendous agony. Victims are left with an ugly blister, a dangerous fever, and symptoms such as nausea and vomiting. This is honestly the most disgusting parasitic worm in the world, and not something you want to become infected with. It rarely kills, but can still make its victims sick for months at a time. And if you're wondering how to avoid the guinea worm, simply don't drink from pond water. The larva can flow into your system when you drink contaminated water. According to the World Health Organization, it takes about 100 days for the male and female larvae to grow and meet each other. at which point the female becomes filled with potential babies and she begins wriggling through your muscles, looking for an easy place to burst out of your skin so that she can release her larva and keep the cycle of life going. Gross. Number 4, killer caterpillar. There is a caterpillar out there that can make you bleed to death with a single touch. It's a unique type of bug found primarily in Brazil. Its scientific name is the Lonomia obliqua, though it's known casually as the assassin caterpillar. Unlike most caterpillars, this one does not look very furry or cuddly. Instead, it almost looks like it's covered in tiny trees. But at the tip of each little tree is a point which can release venom into your body. It's basically covered in venomous barbs. If you were to prick your finger on this caterpillar, you could end up dying. And to make matters even more dangerous, its spikes are clustered in groups so that you're guaranteed to get stabbed more than once. When that happens, the venom enters your bloodstream in such an abundant amount that you can start to internally bleed. You almost immediately see bruises forming on your skin, you'll experience intense pain, and you'll probably get a headache and start vomiting, and after about a day, your blood will have overclotted and caused you to essentially bleed out from the inside. It's a pretty horrendous way to go, especially since all you did was accidentally touch a caterpillar. Number 3, bulldog ant. According to the Guinness World Records, the bulldog ant is the most dangerous ant in the entire world. This terrifying bug can be found in the coastal regions of Australia, of course, where it attacks humans using both its stinger and its jaws at the same time. Since 1936, there have been at least 3 fatalities from the bulldog ant, with the most recent being in 1988. And while 3 obviously isn't a huge number, that's still a pretty shocking amount of people to be killed by measly ants. The bulldog ant got its name because of its uncanny determination during an assault. The ant is wildly and almost irrationally aggressive, showing no fear of humans and stinging as many times as possible while stuffing you full of venom with each rapid bite. The ant holds on with its mandibles for dear life and stings. An attack by bulldog ants can kill a man within 15 minutes. Of course, you could probably just run away and jump in the water, but if you happen to fall asleep on top of their nest, yeah, you're toast. Number 2, murder mosquitoes. Entomologist May Berenbaum from the University of Illinois recently said that people are scared of the wrong insects. There was a huge uproar lately when it became clear that murder hornets had moved into Washington state. But according to this entomologist, the real insect we should all be worried about is the mosquito. Mosquitoes kill millions of people every year by transmitting malaria and dengue fever, according to the World Health Organization. In the United States alone, the CDC reported at least 15 people killed from eastern equine encephalitis, a very rare disease transmitted by, you guessed it, mosquitoes. And that was only in 2020. But get ready to have your mind blown. Forget about coronavirus, the flu, the Black Plague, or any other disease known to mankind. CBS News reported that the mosquito has killed an estimated 50 billion people throughout human existence. That is a shocking number of deaths, and almost unbelievable. And yet, there is basically nothing being done to fight against the dreaded mosquito. Even in 2020, malaria continued to kill 1,100 people a day, and nobody talked about it. When compared to the murder hornet, which kills about a dozen people a year or less, the mosquito really is the destroyer of worlds, and it's just a measly little insect. Number 1, stink bugs. Stink bugs came from Asia to Pennsylvania back in 1996 and are now everywhere, basically throughout the entire world. These horrible pests earned their name because of how stinky they are. If you disturb a stink bug, expect to get a nose full of reek. And if you think you're being clever and crush a stink bug, expect even more reek. These bugs creep into people's houses late in the summer and early in the autumn when temperatures outside start to plummet. And yeah, they stink the place up. These grayish bugs have triangular bodies that look kind of like shields. They are less than an inch, and they aren't actually that dangerous. Instead, they're just very stinky. It's recommended that you avoid handling a stink bug, or really getting anywhere near a stink bug, unless you want your house to smell like rotten eggs. The biggest danger posed by the stink bug is when it infests your home. This can be an absolute nightmare, because they breed like crazy and attract even more bugs. like venomous spiders who follow them inside to feast on them. The next thing you know, your house stinks like gas, there are stink bugs crawling along your windowsills, and poisonous spiders are now making webs right above your head where you sleep. Number 10. Anaconda Monster. While the BBC film crew was filming a new series called Tribe in the Amazon jungle, they stumbled upon something horrific. Of course, pretty much everything in the Amazon can kill you, and the team knew the risks they were taking. But they still weren't ready to meet a giant snake measuring over 17 feet or 5 meters in length. This is one of the strangest and most terrifying monsters ever caught in the Amazon. The enormous, slithering creature is believed to be one of the biggest ever captured. The snake was part of a catch-and-release program to help scientists better understand what's going on with the Amazon's largest predator in the midst of deforestation and oil exploration. The serpent was tracked down with help from the secluded Guarani tribe in Ecuador. This ancient tribe still lives in the rainforest and survives by catching wild pigs and monkeys with blowpipes and sharp sticks. They're also quite proficient in catching river monsters. Luckily for everyone involved, the snake was captured and released, and nobody was injured during the event. Though the Guarani did say that the anaconda is one of the deadliest and most dangerous creatures in the entire jungle. Typical anacondas can weigh over 500 pounds or 227 kilograms. The team took pictures for the record, but needed 4 men just to lift the snake. Number 9. The deadly piranha. One of the strangest and most dangerous creatures in the Amazon is actually a fish, believe it or not. Of course, I'm talking about the vicious piranha. While animals like the anaconda get all the attention for being voracious killers, snakes don't actually attack that many people in the Amazon, while piranhas are responsible for hundreds of reported attacks per year, according to Forbes magazine, and potentially thousands of attacks that go unreported. The piranha is a fish that is categorized by its razor-sharp teeth that can bite through nearly any living thing. They usually swim in swarms, and so when they eat, they will come together to literally pick the bones clean, regardless of what has fallen into the water, thus making them one of the most aggressive and merciless things on Earth. Piranhas prefer to go after prey that is already weak, and that way they can't resist the swarm descending on them and killing them. It should also be noted that there isn't a single species of piranha. There are actually several within the Amazon. This is important because not all piranha species are full-on meat-eaters. Some are herbivores, some are omnivores, and yes, some are meat-eaters purely, like the red-bellied piranha, which are the most dangerous of them all. One of the biggest dangers with fishing in the Amazon is accidentally hooking a piranha on the end of your line and trying to get it off, at which point you could lose a finger. Of course, a piranha won't bite your face off, but if you get into a tangle with one, even out of the water, you could at least lose some small piece of your hand. That being said, fishing and catching piranhas is a lot like fishing and catching any other fish, except you're in the deadly Amazon. Number 8. Creepy alien fish. While on a fishing trip in the Colombian Amazon, a number of tourists caught what has been described as the ugliest fish ever reeled in. Nobody could believe it when one of the tourists captured a strange, white fish that honestly looks like it came from an alien planet. The fishy monster could not be identified right away. Everyone looking at it had no idea what their eyes were seeing. It was totally unlike anything the fishermen had ever encountered before. They didn't even know if they should touch it, because it looked as if it had pointy fins that could be filled with poison. Probably a safe bet. In the end, the tourists threw it back in the river because it was so terrifying, and there wasn't much they could do with it. It wasn't until later that they found out that it was a type of pleco fish, albeit a very rare pleco fish because of its white coloring. It may have been an albino, which is why it looks so bizarre. Plecos are armored catfish native to the Amazon. They can be found all throughout the rivers and channels of the jungle and are known for being wildly aggressive. They're usually not very big, only about 2 feet, but the one caught by the tourists was a certifiable giant at over 3 feet or almost 1 meter long. What would you do if you caught an alien fish like this? Let me know in the comments section below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 7. The most powerful eel. In shocking news, no pun intended, scientists have caught 2 of the world's most electrifying electric eels in the Amazon. Until recently, scientists didn't know there were other species of electric eel. They assumed there was just one, which had a record of producing up to 650 volts. This newest eel, called the Apaporis voltae, is able to produce an incredible 860 volts, enough to seriously cripple a person and cause them to drown. The newest discovery just goes to show how diverse the rainforest really is and how much scientists still don't understand. Research was done by David DeSanta with the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History. Researchers had to collect 107 samples from electric eels throughout the Amazon to properly differentiate the species. Oh, and a super fun fact, electric eels are not actually eels, they are fish. They generate electricity by using specialized organs, usually to defend themselves or to incapacitate prey. If you happen to meet one of these electric eels in the Amazon, you better get out of the water before it zaps you, constricting your muscles and causing you to float helplessly to the bottom, where you might just end up getting eaten by piranhas. Number 6. Jau catfish. One of the truest monsters of the Amazon is the legendary Jau catfish. This thing is an absolute beast and can grow to be a very real giant in the water. On a recent fishing expedition to the Amazon in Bolivia, an angler named Martin caught a Jau catfish weighing over 170 pounds. That's heavier than most people and would take a small group of fishermen just to haul into the boat. The Amazon guide said that after 200 fishing trips along the river, this was the biggest Jau catfish he had ever seen, and was around 60 pounds or 27 kilograms heavier than previous world records. But, believe it or not, the Jau catfish is only one of many catfish found throughout the rivers of the Amazon. The biggest one is the Paraiba catfish, with some reports claiming it can grow to be upwards of 400 pounds. That's a catfish so big that it could theoretically eat a person, or at least a child, if given the opportunity. These are not easy fish to catch and have insane strength, like Japanese sumo wrestlers. Okay, that's an odd comparison, but you get it. Think about trying to pull a sumo into your boat using a fishing line. Is that even possible? Number 5. Mythical pink dolphins. Okay, this one isn't actually a strange catch. It would just be strange and wrong if someone ever did try to catch it. There is one animal roaming the Amazon River more mystical and elusive than any other, and almost never seen by humans. It's called the Amazon pink river dolphin, and it's notoriously difficult to catch sight of. It also looks quite different from most dolphins you're familiar with. Instead of gray skin, it has pink skin. It also has an odd, prolonged snout. These dolphins are really toothed whales, growing up to nearly 10 feet or 3 meters long and weighing roughly 350 pounds or 160 kilograms. They also live for up to 30 years. Why do these dolphins have pink skin? Interestingly enough, they're actually born gray and then they turn pink and blotchy as they reach adulthood, with males turning the pinkest. Pink river dolphins also have the biggest brains of any other dolphin. And unlike dolphins from other parts of the world, these ones aren't hunted. They're considered mythical throughout parts of South America, with locals having a deep respect for them. You'll never catch someone trying to hook a river dolphin. It's considered seriously bad luck. Number 4. Amazon vampires. The payara, also known as the vampire fish, is one of the deadliest catches a person can make in the Amazon. It's wildly popular with tourists who visit Colombia to fish the rarest and most intriguing river predators. The payara is a type of dog-toothed tetra, though far larger and more vicious than the fish you'll find at your local pet store. The vampire fish also goes by the nicknames saber-toothed tigerfish and water wolf. It will literally gobble up piranhas for breakfast. They live in the fastest and wildest parts of the rivers where they're extremely tough to catch, making them a real challenge for even expert anglers. They're also super aggressive and really fast. They are notorious for continuously hunting and ripping bait off the ends of fishing lines. The average payara can grow up to 3 feet with a pair of spiked fangs that curve out of its lower jaw like an upside-down vampire. According to the International Game Fish Association, the biggest payara ever caught was in Venezuela back in 1996, weighing nearly 40 pounds or 18 kilograms. And considering these are basically extra-sized piranhas, 40 pounds, 18 kilograms is a truly monstrous fish. Number 3. The deadly Arapaima. The Arapaima is a huge, savage, hungry, and truly fierce fish living in the Amazon. It's known for having such unfettered power that it can headbutt somebody so hard that their heart stops, though this isn't something that happens all that often. The Arapaima grows upwards of 400 pounds with a total length of around 10 feet or a little over 3 meters. And while the Arapaima is a true Amazonian legend, it was recently spotted far from its home in Florida, of all places. A giant Arapaima was caught in the Caloosahatchee River, shocking local fishing guides and spurring panic. According to fishing captain Mike Smith from North Fort Myers, there are almost certainly more lurking about. It's doubtful that only one Arapaima found its way to Florida all the way from South America. And for that matter, just how did such a dangerous sea serpent get to Florida in the first place? The only thing that makes sense is that someone tried to raise one of these Amazonian monsters at home, then didn't have room for it, and dumped it in a river somewhere. The dangerous part is if the Arapaima somehow meets another, and they start breeding, before anyone knows what's happening, Florida rivers are just as dangerous as those in the Amazon. Number 2. The Rio Apaporis Caiman. Deep in the jungles of Colombia is a part of the Amazon controlled by a violent rebel group. A caiman, once thought to be extinct for over 40 years, was recently discovered by wildlife biologist Forrest Galante. It's called the Rio Apaporis Caiman, and one hasn't been seen since the 1980s. This caiman has a unique snout and weirdly yellow skin, making it significantly different from any other crocodilian on this planet. Catching the caiman was no easy feat. Galante had to go deep into parts of the jungle controlled by drug lords and lawlessness, rife with guerrilla warfare. But oddly enough, it was actually the volatility of the region that kept the caiman and other exotic species safe, since people don't really go into the area. Galante and his team were the first foreigners to go into the jungle there in over 30 years. They caught not just one, but several Rio Apaporis caimans, proving that they still thrive in this exceptionally secluded part of the Amazon. And this is good news, seeing as they have a unique evolutionary lineage going back 7 million years. Hopefully they make a comeback and spread into more parts of the jungle. Number 1. Colombian Stingray. One of the biggest and most fierce stingrays in the world can be found in the Amazon. It's a freshwater stingray that lives on the bottom of the rivers deep in the jungle, known as a discus ray. There was a shocking story a few years ago that one of these stingrays grew to be so huge that it killed a local woman and took off with her body. To investigate the claims, Jeremy Wade from River Monsters went into the jungle to check it out. What he caught was a discus ray so big and so heavy that it very easily could have killed a person. Jeremy actually needed to use the same rod that he'd used before to catch the huge Arapaima. The stingray did not give up without a fight, and when Jeremy finally caught it, the slippery ray turned out to be an extremely massive creature, though it never was confirmed if the stingray ever dragged that woman out into the river. At over 5 feet or 1.5 meters in width and 240 pounds or 110 kilograms in weight, it certainly could have. The ray's barb could have gotten stuck in the woman's flesh, and when it swam upriver, it could have accidentally taken her with it. Thanks for watching. Which one of these creatures is the most strange or scary to you? Would you dare go fishing in the Amazon? Number 10. Nazi wreckage. The wreckage of a German steamship destroyed in war has recently been found by divers. The steamship had been sunk at the very end of the war. It's not the wreckage itself, though, that's so amazing, but rather the crates discovered in the jumbled mess of the broken ship. The crates appear as though they could be filled with treasure stolen from the Amber Room, which lies inside a Russian palace. German soldiers invaded in 1941 and must have taken the loot for themselves. The shipwreck was found just off the coast of Poland at a depth of only 290 feet or 88 meters. That's actually quite shallow for a shipwreck from World War II. The ship itself is called the SS Karlsruhe, and in April of 1945, it was part of a German evacuation from East Prussia, as the few remaining Nazis tried to abandon ship. Historians have suspected for quite some time that treasure from the Amber Room was on the vessel when it fled and then later sank. The treasures had once beautifully decorated a room of pure amber at Catherine Palace on the edge of St. Petersburg. The Russians had actually stolen the idea to do this from the Germans, who had already made a room of amber at the Charlottenburg Palace. Maybe the Germans felt entitled to it? The Russians put over 6 tons or 12,000 pounds of amber into the room, along with treasures that are worth around $500 million today. It's not clear if the Amber Room treasures are inside the shipwreck, but experts are pretty hopeful. We just have to wait until they retrieve the crates out of the ocean and see. Number 9. Leftover bombs. 2 men who were trying to build a map of World War II unexploded ordnance have been killed by the very explosives that they were trying to keep the public safe from. This happened to 2 aid workers in the Solomon Islands. The Solomon Islands is a nation covered in unaccounted for and unexploded bombs from World War II. The aid workers were trying their best to find out where all the deadly munitions were so that they could clean the place up and detonate all the bombs safely. Not the safest of jobs. Well, the men got a bit more than they bargained for after they found a live bomb, took it to the house they were living in, and then got blown up. According to the New York Times, these guys were not supposed to take bombs home with them. Even those who were very close to the men didn't understand what they were thinking. Stephen Atkinson from Britain and Trent Lee from Australia have been described as devoted professionals. But alas, one wrong move spelled the end for them. We don't know what kind of bomb they found, and maybe they thought they could get rid of it themselves for some reason. But in the end, the bomb blew them up and both men died. Number 8. Playing in the backyard. A young boy in Denmark was just trying to do his history homework when he stumbled upon an amazing relic from World War II buried in his own backyard. It all happened after the kid's dad suggested they search the backyard for war artifacts to help with his assignment. What neither of them realized at the time was that a German Messerschmitt fighter plane had crashed on their farm in 1944. They searched the grounds with a metal detector and were shocked to discover a huge collection of metal right under their feet. They used an excavator to dig and discovered a plane. They dug the plane out, which ended up being only 20 feet or about 6 meters beneath their feet the entire time they'd lived in their house. The plane was broken up into tons of pieces when they found it, and definitely not salvageable. But even more amazing is that they also found the dead pilot's bones, his ruined clothing, and the guy's wallet. His wallet even still had money in it. If I were that kid's history teacher, I would be giving him an A+ for sure. Have you ever found something cool buried in your backyard? Let me know if you have in the comments section below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 7. World War II battleship. The USS Nevada was a battleship from World War II that was recently discovered 70 nautical miles or 112 kilometers from Pearl Harbor, resting at the bottom of the ocean at a depth of over 15,000 feet. That's almost 3 miles or 4.8 kilometers. The USS Nevada was commissioned in 1916 and served at Pearl Harbor. The battleship even survived up to 10 blasts and a torpedo impact during the attack on December 7, 1941. But unlike many other ships, it didn't sink that day. It was actually repaired and went on to participate in the deadly invasion of Normandy in 1944. Using its huge 5-inch or 12-centimeter and 14-inch or 36-centimeter guns to batter the German defenses as American soldiers stormed the beaches. Later, the battleship joined the invasions of Okinawa and Iwo Jima in Japan. Then, at the very end of the war, as the battleship neared the end of its life, the Army used it as a target in some of their first atomic bomb tests at Bikini Atoll. The ship was still afloat even after getting hit by 2 atomic bombs. But it was then rendered radioactive, towed to Pearl Harbor, and used as target practice. Then eventually hit by an aerial torpedo and purposely sank. This thing sure did take a beating throughout its life. But the Navy never recorded the exact coordinates of where it sank, making the recent discovery of the battleship at the bottom of the ocean quite impressive. Number 6. Hidden air raid shelter. During the coronavirus pandemic lockdown in England, a grandfather, Kandu Patel, discovered an air raid shelter hidden underneath his lawn. He'd been living in his house for 40 years and never had a clue. According to the grandfather himself, he always wondered why there was a manhole cover in his yard, but he never bothered investigating. Then, being bored with the pandemic, he and a friend decided to lift the manhole cover and see what was underneath. They were shocked to discover what looked like a ceiling of concrete. They had to break through the concrete, at which point they discovered a staircase leading down to a secret air raid shelter. From what experts can tell, the shelter was probably used during the war to keep the local neighbors safe during German bombings. Then, for whatever reason, it was covered up and abandoned, with the only evidence of its existence being a measly manhole cover. Now Patel plans to turn the air raid shelter into a bar for him and his family to enjoy. I like the way this guy thinks. What would you turn it into? Number 5. Metals in the dumpster. A dumpster diver in Hickory, North Carolina discovered the legacy of a war hero. The hero's name was Donald Helfer, and he flew in 28 missions during World War II and was decorated for his outstanding bravery. He got a Navy Flying Cross and a Bronze Star. He even got a letter straight from the president of the time, Harry Truman, expressing gratitude for helping to defeat the enemy. But Helfer never told his family about what he'd done in the military. He buried his past and became a police officer in New York before retiring to Florida and passing away in 1993. His kids never really knew who he was. Then, along comes a dumpster diver who discovered Helfer's medals, his photos and identification, and his military records amongst a heap of garbage. They were probably discarded by whoever found them while sorting through his late wife's estate and decided to just toss them in the trash. But the dumpster diver recognized their worth, he sought out an American Legion post, and turned them over. Helfer's daughter, Linda DeLory, was eventually contacted, and she made the long drive out to pick up her dad's belongings. Linda found herself amazed as she turned the pages of the neatly organized binder the man had put together, containing her father's precious photos and mementos. There were pictures she had never seen before. DeLory also got to see a picture of her grandfather. History was unfolding right before her eyes. Now that the treasure has been restored to her family, Linda plans to share it with her relatives as soon as she's able. Suffice to say, it was a very emotional trip. Number 4. Lost submarine. In 1943, the USS Grenadier submarine was attacked by Japanese bombers and scuttled. The crew members were taken by the Japanese soldiers and tortured at a prison camp for over 2 incredibly long years, which must have felt like centuries for the men. The ship had a very violent and tragic history and was ultimately lost. But recently, about 90 miles or 145 kilometers from Thailand, some divers stumbled upon this very ship over 200 feet or 60 meters below the water, 77 years after it was submerged. The wreckage is now rich in marine life and hardly looks like a weapon of war. There's algae all over it, and it's even covered in dirty old fishing nets. But how did the ship go down in the first place? According to the New York Times, it was April 20th when they were attacked by a Japanese plane, forcing them to go down 267 feet or 81 meters below the surface. The hull and hatches were leaking. A fire had broken out, and they were in pretty rough shape. 2 days later, they were struck again. They had no choice but to quickly destroy their coding machine with hammers, get rid of all of their important data, and scuttle the ship. 76 members of the crew survived, though what followed were 2 years of beatings, burnings, breakings, and other unspeakable horrors. Number 3. Live explosions. Carl Peterson was checking out his grandfather's war collection when he discovered something quite shocking. What Carl found inside the box of World War II memorabilia caused the evacuation of almost an entire street in the High Springs area. Carl's grandfather had sent the box back home from the last ship he was on during the war. And among some fairly normal memorabilia, there were also 2 live Japanese knee mortars that had been sitting there for 75 years. The box had been kept in the family shed, and nobody had any idea that the box could have blown up at any minute. Carl phoned the police, and they called the bomb squad, and the situation was defused. No pun intended. Carl was able to keep the box of artifacts, which included signal cards, old war rations, and even Japanese cigarettes sent home by his grandfather. The bombs, on the other hand, were confiscated. Why his grandfather thought it would be okay to keep knee mortars in the shed is still a bit of a mystery. Number 2. Lost Enigma Machine. It was in 2020 that German divers commissioned by the World Wildlife Foundation went to the Baltic Sea to extract abandoned fishing nets from the seafloor. While they were cleaning up the water and getting rid of those pesky nets, they stumbled upon an extremely rare machine used by the Germans during the Second World War. It was an Enigma machine, one of the rarest artifacts from the war. When the Germans realized that they were losing, they began destroying all of their code machines and throwing them overboard from any vessel that were out at sea. They desperately wanted to keep the codes and the technology away from the Allied forces. Historians believe this Enigma machine was probably thrown over the side of a vessel where it had been left to rot on the seafloor ever since. The encryption device itself was invented in 1919 by a Dutch national named Hugo Koch. He had invented the machine for business purposes. But once the German army got a hold of it, they modified the machine and turned it into the most notorious code-sending contraption in all of history. The artifact has since been handed over to an archaeology museum in Germany, where it will be restored and then put on display for the public. Number 1. The bucket list. The final story today isn't exactly about something discovered, at least not in the usual way. In Maryland, a veteran from World War II has finally crossed something off of her bucket list. She worked up the courage to finally go skydiving at the ripe old age of 102. She was apparently inspired by President George H.W. Bush, who did the same thing when he was 90, but she beat him by 12 years. Let this be a heartfelt lesson for everyone that it's never too late to live your dreams. Vivian Bailey joined the Army and had become a second lieutenant by 1943. Nearly 80 years later, she discovered her youth by jumping out of an airplane. Thanks for watching. Have you ever found a World War II treasure? Let me know about it in the comments, and be sure to hit that subscribe button for more awesome videos from the channel. See you next time. Bye-bye.